The winter wind cut through the narrow alleyways of old Beijing like a knife through paper. Chen Mei-lin pulled her thin cotton jacket tighter around her frail shoulders as she made her way home from another day of searching for work. At 68 years old, her back ached from decades of labor, but her spirit remained unbroken. The small apartment she shared with her daughter Li Hong was their only refuge in a world that seemed increasingly hostile to the poor. Li Hong had been born with a weak heart, a condition that the doctor said would require expensive surgery to fix. The young woman, now 25, could barely walk up a flight of stairs without gasping for breath. Despite her condition, she tried to work from home, doing small sewing jobs for local shops. The pay was barely enough to buy rice and vegetables, let alone save for the medical treatment she desperately needed. Mei-lin remembered the day Li Hong was born during a harsh winter storm. Her husband, Chen Wei-ming, had carried his wife through the snow to reach the hospital. The doctor had delivered the bad news about their daughter's heart condition with cold efficiency. "She will need surgery when she is older," he had said. "It will be expensive." Wei-ming had worked 3 jobs to try to save money for the operation. But a factory accident took his life when Li Hong was only 12 years old. After Wei-ming's death, Mei-lin took over as the sole provider. She worked as a cleaning lady in office buildings, scrubbing floors and emptying trash cans until her hands were raw and bleeding. She sold vegetables in the market during the day and sewed clothes at night by candlelight to save electricity. Every yuan she earned went toward basic survival, with a small portion set aside for Li Hong's eventual surgery. The apartment they lived in was barely bigger than a closet. The roof leaked during rainy season, and the walls were so thin they could hear every conversation from the neighbors. There was no proper heating system, just a small coal stove that they could only afford to light on the coldest nights. The bathroom was shared with 3 other families down the hall, and hot water was a luxury they had not experienced in years. Mei-lin watched her daughter grow weaker each year. Li Hong tried to hide her pain, but her mother could see the struggle in her eyes. The young woman would stop frequently while walking, pressing her hand to her chest as she fought for breath. Her lips often turned blue in the cold weather, and her energy levels dropped dramatically during winter months. "Mama, maybe we should accept that this is how things are meant to be," Li Hong said one evening as they shared a bowl of thin soup. "The surgery costs more money than we could ever save. Perhaps it is better to focus on being grateful for what we have." Mei-lin looked at her daughter's pale face and felt her heart breaking. She had failed as a mother. She had not been able to provide the medical care her child needed. The weight of this failure pressed down on her shoulders like a heavy stone. "No, my dear daughter," Mei-lin replied firmly. "A mother's love knows no limits. I will find a way to get you the help you need. I promise you this." But as winter grew harsher, their situation became more desperate. The small sewing jobs dried up as people had less money to spend on clothing repairs. Mei-lin's cleaning work was reduced to just 2 days a week because the office building was cutting costs. Their savings, which had taken years to accumulate, dwindled to almost nothing. One particularly cold night, the coal ran out completely. Mei-lin lay in bed, listening to her daughter's labored breathing, and made a decision that would haunt her for weeks to come. She quietly got up, took their last bit of money, and walked through the freezing streets to buy coal. When she returned, she lit the stove and sat beside it, giving all the warmth to Li Hong while she shivered in the cold. The next morning, Mei-lin woke up with a terrible cough and fever. But she still went out looking for work, knowing that staying home meant no money for food. She cleaned 3 different offices that day, her body burning with fever as she scrubbed floors and cleaned windows. When she came home, Li Hong was waiting with worried eyes. "Mama, you are sick. You should rest," Li Hong said, trying to help her mother to bed. "Rest is for people who can afford it," Mei-lin replied with a weak smile. "We are not those people." As days passed, Mei Lin's condition worsened, but she continued working. She sold her wedding ring, the last valuable possession she owned, to buy medicine for her fever. The ring had been a gift from Wei Ming on their wedding day, and losing it felt like losing him all over again. But Li Hong's health was more important than sentimental attachments. The medicine helped slightly, but Mei Lin's body was worn down from years of hard labor and poor nutrition. She began to stumble while walking and found it difficult to concentrate on her work. The office managers started complaining about her performance, and she knew it would not be long before they let her go entirely. One evening, as she sat by the window watching snow fall on the empty street below, Mei Lin made a desperate plan. She had heard stories of people who sold everything they owned to pay for their children's medical treatments. Some had even sold their homes and moved to the streets. If that was what it took to save Li Hong, she was prepared to do it. The next morning, Mei Lin went to see Mr. Wang, their landlord. He was a harsh man who showed no mercy to tenants who were late with rent payments. She had been avoiding him for weeks because they owed 2 months of rent money. "Mr. Wang," she said, bowing respectfully, "I need to ask you something important." The landlord looked at her with suspicion. "If you are here to ask for more time to pay rent, the answer is no. You have until the end of this week, or you are out on the street." "I am not here to ask for time," Mei Lin replied. "I want to know if you would be willing to let my daughter continue living in the apartment if I give up my place and sleep outside." Mr. Wang stared at her in shock. "What are you talking about, old woman?" "My daughter is very sick. She needs warmth and shelter to survive. I can work more hours if I do not have to worry about sleeping. I can sleep in doorways or under bridges. But please, let her stay inside where it is warm." The landlord's expression softened slightly. Even he was not cruel enough to be unmoved by a mother's desperation. "That is the most foolish thing I have ever heard. You will die of cold within a week." "Maybe," Mei Lin admitted, "but Li Hong might live, and that is all that matters to me." Mr. Wang shook his head. "I cannot allow this. It would be like helping someone commit suicide. Find another way to solve your problems." Mei Lin left his office feeling more desperate than ever. If even the harsh landlord thought her plan was too extreme, what hope did she have? But she could not give up. Li Hong's life depended on her finding a solution. That evening, she sat down with her daughter and explained their financial situation honestly for the first time. Li Hong listened in silence as her mother detailed exactly how much money they owed and how little they had coming in. "We have enough food for maybe 3 more days," Mei Lin concluded. "After that, I do not know what we will do." Li Hong was quiet for a long time. Then she reached over and took her mother's weathered hands in her own. "Mama, you have sacrificed everything for me already. Maybe it is time for me to accept that some things are beyond our control." "No," Mei Lin said firmly. "I will not give up on you. There has to be another way." But as she lay awake that night listening to the wind howl outside their thin walls, Mei Lin began to wonder if her daughter was right. Perhaps some burdens were too heavy for one person to carry alone. Perhaps love, no matter how strong, was not always enough to overcome the harsh realities of poverty and illness. The next morning brought news that would change everything. Mrs. Chen from down the hall knocked on their door with an urgent expression on her face. "Mei Lin, there is a man downstairs asking about you. He says he is from some kind of charity organization. He wants to talk to you about your daughter." Mei Lin's heart raced as she hurried downstairs. Could this be the miracle she had been praying for? Or was it just another false hope in a life that had seen too many disappointments? The man standing in the building's entrance was well-dressed and carried an official-looking folder under his arm. He introduced himself as Dr. Liu from the Beijing Children's Heart Foundation. "Mrs. Chen, We have heard about your daughter's condition through one of the local hospitals. Our organization provides free surgery for children and young adults who cannot afford the treatment they need. Mei Lin felt her legs grow weak. Free surgery? Is this really possible? Yes, but there are requirements, Dr. Liu explained. The patient must be under 30 years of age and meet certain medical criteria. If your daughter qualifies, we can schedule the operation within the next few months. For the first time in years, Mei Lin allowed herself to hope. Maybe Li Hong would have a chance at a normal life after all. Maybe all the suffering and sacrifice would finally lead to something good. But as Dr. Liu explained the application process, Mei Lin realized there would be new challenges ahead. The surgery would require Li Hong to stay in the hospital for several weeks, and Mei Lin would need to take time off work to care for her during recovery. They would still need money for food and rent during that time. The foundation could provide the surgery for free, but everything else would still be their responsibility. Mei Lin looked at the forms Dr. Liu gave her and realized that even this miracle came with a price she was not sure she could pay. The hospital corridors smelled of disinfectant and hope mixed together. Mei Lin sat on a hard plastic chair outside the cardiac surgery department, her hands folded tightly in her lap as she waited for news about Li Hong's operation. It had been 6 hours since the doctors had taken her daughter into surgery, and each minute felt like an eternity. 3 weeks earlier, Dr. Liu had returned with incredible news. Li Hong qualified for the free heart surgery program. The Beijing Children's Heart Foundation would cover all medical costs, including the operation, hospital stay, and follow-up care. When Mei Lin heard this news, she had fallen to her knees and wept with relief. But the joy was quickly tempered by harsh reality. While the surgery was free, everything else still cost money. Li Hong would need to stay in the hospital for at least 2 weeks after the operation. During that time, Mei Lin would have to take unpaid leave from her cleaning jobs to be with her daughter. Without her small income, they would have no money for rent, food, or basic necessities. Mei Lin had tried to explain this to Dr. Liu, hoping the foundation might provide additional support, but he had shaken his head sympathetically. "I am sorry, Mrs. Chen. Our resources are limited to medical care only. We cannot provide financial assistance for living expenses." The weeks leading up to the surgery had been a nightmare of preparation. Mei Lin worked double shifts, cleaning offices at night and taking on extra sewing work during the day. She barely slept, surviving on 3 hours of rest each night as she desperately tried to save every possible yuan. She sold their few remaining possessions piece by piece. The small radio that had belonged to her husband went to a pawn shop for 30 yuan. Her winter coat, threadbare but still functional, brought another 50 yuan. She even sold the cooking pot they used to make soup, planning to buy a cheaper one later. Li Hong watched her mother's frantic efforts with growing concern. "Mama, you are killing yourself with all this work. Maybe we should wait until we have more money saved." "No," Mei Lin had replied firmly. "The doctors say your heart is getting weaker. We cannot wait. This surgery might be our only chance." As the surgery date approached, Mei Lin became increasingly desperate. She had managed to save enough money for 2 weeks of basic expenses, but she knew it would not be enough if there were any complications. What if Li Hong needed to stay in the hospital longer? What if there were additional costs they had not anticipated? The night before the surgery, Mei Lin sat by her daughter's bedside in the pre-operation room. Li Hong looked so small and fragile in the hospital gown, her face pale against the white pillows. "Mama, I want you to promise me something," Li Hong whispered. "Anything. My dear daughter, if something happens to me during the surgery, I want you to stop sacrificing everything for me. I want you to find a warm place to live and take care of yourself." Mei Lin's eyes filled with tears. "Nothing will happen to you. You are going to be fine." "Promise me anyway," Li Hong insisted. "I promise. Mei Lin lied, knowing she could never keep such a promise. Now, as she sat in the waiting area, Mei Lin replayed that conversation in her mind. The surgery had started at 6 in the morning, and it was now past noon. A nurse had come out once to say that everything was proceeding normally, but that had been 2 hours ago. Other families sat nearby, all wearing the same expression of anxious hope. An elderly man paced back and forth, muttering prayers under his breath. A young couple held hands tightly, their eyes fixed on the surgery department doors. Everyone was waiting for news that would either save their world or destroy it. Mei Lin's stomach rumbled loudly. She had not eaten since the previous evening, having spent her last few yuan on a small meal for Li Hong before the surgery. The hospital cafeteria smelled wonderful, but the prices were beyond her reach. A simple bowl of rice cost more than she would normally spend on food for an entire day. A nurse approached the waiting area and called out a name. The young couple stood up nervously and followed her into a consultation room. They emerged 20 minutes later with tears of joy on their faces. Their child's surgery had been successful. Mei Lin felt a stab of envy mixed with genuine happiness for them. She tried to imagine how it would feel to receive such good news about Li Hong. Would she cry? Would she laugh? Would she collapse from relief? As the afternoon wore on, Mei Lin's exhaustion began to catch up with her. She had been running on adrenaline and determination for weeks, but now the lack of sleep and food was taking its toll. Her vision grew blurry, and she found it difficult to focus on the magazine she was pretending to read. A kind-looking woman sitting nearby noticed her struggling. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked gently. "Just tired," Mei Lin replied, trying to smile. "When did you last eat something?" Mei Lin could not remember. "I am not hungry." The woman reached into her purse and pulled out a packaged sandwich. "Here, take this. My son's surgery is finished, but I brought too much food." Mei Lin wanted to refuse, but her body was screaming for nourishment. "Thank you," she whispered, accepting the sandwich gratefully. As she ate, the woman told her story. Her 8-year-old son had just undergone the same type of heart surgery as Li Hong. "The operation took 7 hours," she said, "but the doctors say he will make a full recovery. Your daughter will be fine too." "How can you be so certain?" Mei Lin asked. "Because mothers who love their children as much as you obviously love yours create miracles," the woman replied with a warm smile. Just as Mei Lin finished the sandwich, Dr. Zhang, the lead surgeon, emerged from the operating room. He looked tired but satisfied as he scanned the waiting area. "Family of Li Hongchen," he called out. Mei Lin's heart nearly stopped as she stood up on shaking legs. "That is me," she managed to say. Dr. Zhang smiled broadly. "The surgery was a complete success. Your daughter's heart is now functioning normally. She is in recovery now, and you can see her in about an hour." Mei Lin felt the room spinning around her. The relief was so overwhelming that she had to grab onto a chair to keep from falling. "She is really going to be okay?" "Better than okay," Dr. Zhang confirmed. "With proper care and follow-up, she should be able to live a completely normal life. No more breathing problems, no more fatigue. She will be like a new person." The kind woman who had given her the sandwich was crying with joy. "I told you it would be a miracle," she said, hugging Mei Lin tightly. But as the initial euphoria faded, reality began to set in. Li Hong would need to stay in the hospital for at least 2 weeks, possibly longer. Mei Lin had already used up her meager savings just to get this far. How would she pay for food and rent while staying at the hospital? That evening, as Li Hong slept peacefully in her hospital bed, Mei Lin walked the corridors trying to figure out her next move. The nursing staff had been kind enough to let her sleep in a chair beside her daughter's bed, but she would still need money for food and to pay the rent that was due in 10 days. She tried calling her former employers to see if she could work partial shifts while Li Hong recovered, but they had already replaced her. The cleaning company told her they could not guarantee her old job would be available when she was ready to return full-time. Over the next few days, Mei Lin watched her daughter's remarkable recovery with joy mixed with growing panic. Li Hong's color improved daily, her breathing became easier, and her energy levels increased dramatically. The doctors were amazed by how well she was responding to the surgery. "Your daughter is healing faster than we expected," Dr. Zhang told Mei Lin during his daily rounds. "She might be able to go home a few days earlier than planned." This should have been wonderful news, but Mei Lin knew that going home meant facing eviction. She had already received 2 threatening letters from Mr. Wang about the overdue rent. Without her cleaning job, she had no way to pay what she owed. On Li Hong's 5th day in the hospital, a social worker named Miss Liu came to visit them. She was a young woman with kind eyes who worked with families facing financial difficulties. "I understand you are having trouble with housing costs while your daughter recovers," Miss Liu said gently. "We have a small emergency fund that might be able to help." Mei Lin felt a surge of hope. "Really? How much assistance is available?" "We can provide up to 500 wen for families in crisis," Miss Liu explained. "It is not much, but it might help cover some basic expenses." 500 wen was more money than Mei Lin had seen in months, but she quickly calculated that it would only cover half of the rent she owed. She would still be short, and she had no prospects for earning the rest. "There might be another option," Miss Liu continued. "There is a temporary housing program for families with medical emergencies. You could stay in a shared facility with other families until you get back on your feet." The shared housing sounded better than living on the street, but Mei Lin worried about Li Hong's recovery. Would she get proper rest in a crowded facility with strangers? Would there be adequate privacy and quiet for healing? That night, as Li Hong slept, Mei Lin sat by the window looking out at the city lights. She could see people walking on the streets below, all of them with homes to return to, jobs to go to in the morning, families to support them. She felt utterly alone in her struggle. A text message from Mr. Wang arrived on the old phone she had been putting off checking. "Rent payment due tomorrow or eviction proceedings begin immediately." Mei Lin stared at the message for a long time. She had worked so hard to save Li Hong's life, but now she faced the possibility of having nowhere to take her daughter once she was released from the hospital. The next morning brought another crisis. Li Hong developed a slight fever, which the doctor said was normal but would require her to stay in the hospital for at least 3 additional days. This meant 3 more days without income, 3 more days of mounting debt. Mei Lin walked to the hospital bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. Her hair had gone completely gray over the past month. Her face was gaunt from not eating regularly. Her clothes hung loose on her shrinking frame. She looked like a ghost of her former self. But as she stared at her reflection, Mei Lin made a decision. She would do whatever it took to ensure Li Hong had a place to recover when she left the hospital. Even if it meant sleeping on the streets herself, she would find a way to provide shelter for her daughter. She spent that afternoon exploring every possible option. She visited 3 different charity organizations, applied for emergency government assistance, and even swallowed her pride to ask former neighbors for help. Most doors were closed to her, but a few people offered small amounts of money or temporary solutions. By evening, she had managed to piece together enough resources to pay the rent for 1 more month. It would mean eating only 1 small meal per day and giving up all other expenses. But Li Hong would have a warm place to continue her recovery. As she sat beside her daughter's bed that night, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest, Mei Lin felt a mixture of exhaustion and determination. The surgery had been successful, but the battle for survival was far from over. She still had to find a way to rebuild their lives from nothing while caring for a daughter who was just beginning to heal. Li Hong stirred in her sleep and reached out unconsciously for her mother's hand. Mei Lin took her daughter's warm fingers in her own cold ones and made a silent promise. No matter what sacrifices lay ahead, she would ensure that this new chance at life was not wasted. The taxi ride home from the hospital should have been a celebration. Li Hong sat beside her mother, breathing easily for the first time in her adult life. The surgery had been a complete success, and the doctors had declared her recovery remarkable. Her cheeks had color again, her lips were no longer blue, and she could walk upstairs without gasping for breath. But Mei Lin could not share in her daughter's joy. Hidden in her coat pocket was an eviction notice that had arrived 3 days earlier. Despite all her efforts to gather money from various sources, she was still short on the rent payment. Mr. Wang had given them until the end of the week to pay or face immediate eviction. "Mama, you have been so quiet since we left the hospital," Li Hong observed as they climbed the stairs to their apartment. "Are you feeling sick?" "Just tired, my dear," Mei Lin replied, forcing a smile. "It has been a long few weeks for both of us." But Li Hong was no longer the weak, breathless girl she had been before the surgery. Her mind was clearer, her energy higher, and she could see through her mother's pretense. "Something is wrong. You have lost too much weight, and you look worried all the time." When they entered their small apartment, Mei Lin was shocked by how cold it was inside. The heat had been turned off 2 days earlier due to non-payment. The electricity would be next if she could not find money soon. She had been so focused on the hospital expenses that she had fallen behind on all their other bills. Li Hong immediately noticed the cold and the pile of unpaid bills on the small table. "Mama, what is all this? Why is it so cold in here?" Mei Lin could no longer hide the truth. She sat down heavily on their one remaining chair and told Li Hong everything. The eviction notice, the unpaid utilities, the lost jobs, the empty bank account. As she spoke, she watched her daughter's face change from confusion to understanding to horror. "You mean we might be homeless?" Li Hong asked quietly. "I am working on solutions," Mei Lin replied, though she had no idea what those solutions might be. That night, they huddled together under every blanket they owned, trying to stay warm in the unheated apartment. Li Hong's newly repaired heart beat strongly, but Mei Lin could feel her daughter shivering despite the blankets. "This is all my fault," Li Hong whispered in the darkness. "If I had not needed the surgery, you would not have lost your job. You would not have spent all our money." "Do not say such things," Mei Lin replied firmly. "Your surgery saved your life. That is worth everything." "But what good is my life if it costs you yours?" Li Hong asked. Mei Lin had no answer for that question. The next morning brought Mr. Wang and 2 large men to their door. The landlord looked uncomfortable, but his companions seemed eager to complete their business. "Mrs. Chen, I am sorry it has come to this," Mr. Wang said, "but you have 3 hours to pack your belongings and leave the premises. The eviction is final." Mei Lin looked at the men and then at her daughter, who was still weak from surgery despite her improvement. "Please, Mr. Wang, my daughter just came home from the hospital yesterday. Can you give us 1 more week?" "I have already given you more time than I should have," he replied. "Other tenants are complaining that I am not fair to them when I let some people stay without paying." Li Hong stepped forward, her new strength evident in her posture. "How much money do we owe?" Mr. Wang checked his papers. 3 months' rent plus late fees. 2,800 yuan total. Li Hong's face went pale. It was more money than they had ever seen at one time. After the men left, Mei Lin and Li Hong began the heartbreaking process of deciding what to pack and what to leave behind. They had so few possessions that everything fit into 2 small suitcases and a cloth bag. "Where will we go?" Li Hong asked, as she carefully folded her few clothes. Mei Lin had been asking herself the same question for days. The temporary housing program Miss Liu had mentioned had a waiting list of several months. The homeless shelters were full and only allowed people to stay for 3 days at a time. They had no relatives who could help and no friends with extra space. "We will figure something out," Mei Lin said, though she had no plan beyond getting through the next few hours. As they prepared to leave, Li Hong made a discovery that changed everything. Hidden in an old book, she found 800 yuan that Mei Lin had saved years earlier and forgotten about during all the recent chaos. "Mama, look what I found!" Li Hong exclaimed, holding up the money. Mei Lin stared at the bills in amazement. "I had forgotten about that. Your father and I hid that money for emergencies, but after he died, I was too upset to remember where we put it." 800 yuan was not enough to save their apartment, but it was enough to rent a small room somewhere else for a few weeks. As they walked through the streets with their belongings, Mei Lin stopped at every building with rental signs. But their hopes were quickly crushed. Most landlords wanted first month's rent plus a security deposit, which was more money than they had. Others took one look at their worn clothes and refused to consider them as tenants. By evening, they were exhausted and still homeless. Li Hong's strength was beginning to fade despite her successful surgery. She needed rest and warmth to complete her recovery, but they had nowhere to go. They found themselves in a small park near the city center, sitting on a bench as darkness fell around them. Other homeless people began to appear, setting up makeshift shelters in doorways and under bridges. "Mama, I am scared," Li Hong admitted. "We will be fine," Mei Lin replied, though she was terrified herself. As the temperature dropped, Mei Lin made a decision. She took Li Hong to a 24-hour restaurant and used some of their precious money to buy hot soup and tea. The warmth felt wonderful, and Li Hong's color improved immediately. "We cannot stay here all night," Li Hong pointed out. "No, but we can stay until they close at dawn," Mei Lin replied. They spent the night moving between different establishments that stayed open late. A convenience store, a bus station waiting area, a hospital lobby. Each place gave them a few hours of warmth before security guards asked them to move along. By the second day of homelessness, Li Hong was becoming weak again. The stress and cold were affecting her recovery from surgery. She needed a warm, quiet place to rest, but they had nowhere to go. That afternoon, Mei Lin made a desperate decision. She used most of their remaining money to rent a tiny room in a boarding house for 1 week. The room was barely large enough for a single bed and had no heat, but it had 4 walls and a roof. "This is for you," she told Li Hong as they looked at the small space. "You need somewhere warm to recover." "What about you?" Li Hong asked. "I will find somewhere else to sleep. The important thing is that you have shelter." Li Hong protested, but Mei Lin was firm. She helped her daughter settle into the room and then left to explore her options for sleeping outside. The first night on the street was the hardest thing Mei Lin had ever experienced. She found a doorway near the boarding house where she could keep watch over the building where Li Hong was sleeping. The concrete was like ice against her body, and the wind cut through her thin clothes like knives. She dozed fitfully, waking every few minutes from the cold or from the sounds of other homeless people moving around in the darkness. Several times she considered abandoning her plan and sharing the small bed with Li Hong, but she knew her daughter needed uninterrupted rest to heal properly. When morning came, Mei Lin was stiff and exhausted, but she managed to find a public bathroom where she could wash her face and hands. She bought a small breakfast and took it to Li Hong, pretending that she had slept comfortably elsewhere. "Where exactly did you sleep last night?" Li Hong asked, suspiciously. "A friend let me stay on her couch," Mei Lin lied. But Li Hong was not fooled. She had looked out the window during the night and seen a figure huddled in the doorway below. She suspected it was her mother, but had not said anything. This pattern continued for 3 more nights. Mei Lin slept outside in the cold, while Li Hong recovered in the warm room. Each morning, she brought her daughter breakfast and pretended that everything was fine. But the lack of proper sleep and exposure to the weather was taking its toll on her health. On the fourth night, Li Hong could no longer stand the deception. She waited until she was sure her mother was settled in the doorway below, then quietly left the boarding house and confronted her. "Mama, I know you have been sleeping here," she said, kneeling down beside the shivering figure in the doorway. Mei Lin looked up with tired eyes. "Go back inside, Li Hong. You need your rest." "Not without you," Li Hong replied firmly. "We are in this together." "You just had major surgery," Mei Lin protested. "You cannot sleep on the street. And you are my mother. I cannot let you freeze to death while I sleep in comfort." They argued quietly for several minutes, each trying to convince the other to take the warm room. Finally, Li Hong made a proposal that surprised them both. "What if we take turns? One night you sleep inside, one night I sleep inside. That way we both get some warmth and rest." Mei Lin wanted to refuse, but she was so cold and tired that she could barely think straight. "You are still recovering. You need more rest than I do." "My heart is fixed now," Li Hong replied. "I am stronger than you think." Reluctantly, Mei Lin agreed to try Li Hong's plan. They would alternate nights in the warm room while the other slept outside. It was not ideal, but it was better than having one of them freeze to death. The arrangement worked for several days, though both women suffered from the cold nights outside, but their shared struggle brought them closer together. They had always been devoted to each other, but now they were truly partners in survival. On their last day before the room rental expired, Li Hong made an announcement that surprised her mother. "I found a job today." Mei Lin looked at her in shock. "What kind of job? You are still supposed to be recovering." "Light assembly work at a factory. They make small electronics. I can do it sitting down and the pay is decent. Enough for us to rent a proper room together." Li Hong had walked all over the city during her rest days, looking for work that would accommodate her current physical limitations. The factory manager had been impressed by her determination and had offered her a position starting immediately. "Are you sure you are strong enough for factory work?" Mei Lin asked. "Mama, my heart is completely healed. The doctors said I can live a normal life now. That includes working to support us." For the first time in months, Mei Lin allowed herself to feel hope. With Li Hong's income and her own plans to find new cleaning work, they might be able to afford a decent apartment and regular meals. The next week, they moved into a small but warm apartment across town. It had heat, electricity, and a kitchen where they could cook their own meals. After weeks of uncertainty and cold nights, having a secure place to live felt like a miracle. As they unpacked their few belongings in their new home, Li Hong turned to her mother with tears in her eyes. "Mama, I will never forget what you were willing to sacrifice for me, sleeping outside in the cold so I could stay warm. No daughter has ever been loved more than you love me." Mei Lin hugged her daughter tightly, feeling the strong, steady heartbeat that the surgery had made possible. "A mother's love knows no limits," she replied. "I would do anything for you." "And now I want to do something for you," Li Hong said. "I want to work hard and save money so that you never have to worry about having a warm place to sleep again." 6 months later, both women had steady jobs and had saved enough money to move into an even better apartment. Li Hong's factory work had led to a promotion, and Mei Lin had found employment with a cleaning company that offered health insurance and paid vacation days. On cold winter nights, they would sit together in their warm living room, drinking tea and remembering the time when they had nothing but each other's love to keep them going. The memory of those desperate weeks had taught them to never take simple comforts for granted. Li Hong's heart grew stronger every day, and she eventually became a supervisor at the electronics factory. Mei Lin was able to reduce her working hours and spend more time enjoying the life they had built together. Sometimes, when they passed homeless people on the street, they would stop to offer food or money. They understood better than most how quickly circumstances could change and how important it was to help others who were struggling. The old Chinese mother who had once cried that she could barely keep upright had found her strength in the love she felt for her daughter. And the daughter, whose heart had been healed by surgery, discovered that her mother's sacrifice had taught her the true meaning of resilience and devotion. They had survived their darkest hour together, and they would face whatever challenges lay ahead with the knowledge that their love for each other could overcome any obstacle.